In March 2024, beneath the concrete foundations of a decommissioned airfield outside Berlin, a civilian construction crew struck something that halted work within hours. A reinforced vault door, marked with the faded insignia of the Luftwaffe, and the words Betreten verboten, entry forbidden. Within days, Bundesarchiv officials arrived, cordoning off the site under the pretext of unexploded ordnance investigation. But one image, leaked by a subcontractor, revealed a stack of sealed crates bearing the stamp RLM, Sonderentwicklung 1944. When the vault was finally opened, investigators found a sealed cache of documents, reels of magnetic tape, and fragments of aircraft fuselage made from unknown composite materials. Each artifact was tagged under a single codename, Operation Hummingbird. The discovery has since triggered a classified inquiry by the German Defense Ministry and renewed questions within NATO's archival divisions about a missing program from the final months of World War II, one that should never have existed at all. Chapter 1. The Vault Beneath Tempelhof Airfield. At dawn on March 19, 2024, the demolition crew contracted for the redevelopment of Tempelhof's southern perimeter logged an obstruction at grid coordinate 52 degree 28.42 na 13.24.14 What they believed to be a buried fuel reservoir turned out to be a sealed chamber reinforced with tungsten bolts and 3 layers of steel plate. The team's drill cores returned samples containing an alloy no current catalogue could identify. Within hours, the site was classified as a historical hazard, and the Bundeswehr's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit took control. The lead engineer, Markus Heine, recalled in his incident statement that a magnetic field anomaly caused handheld sensors to malfunction near the sealed hatch. His report, filed under Temporary Restriction Order 44/2024, was later redacted before reaching the public archive. Inside the chamber, investigators from the Federal Office for Infrastructure, Environmental Protection and Services of the Bundeswehr, BAIUDBW, found 3 wooden crates bearing Luftwaffe property tags dated December 1944. Each was marked RLM Sonderentwicklung 1344, Reichsluftfahrtministerium Special Development, file reference 13 of 1944. The crates contained reels of 16mm film, dozens of rusted schematics, and logbooks stamped with the insignia of Flugtechnische Versuchsstelle Rechlin, the Reich's Central Aircraft Testing Command. Among the entries was a repeated designation, Project Colibri. In English, Hummingbird. Digital imaging specialists at the German Federal Archives began restoration of the water-damaged film reels. When enhanced, the footage revealed test flights of an unfamiliar aircraft over the frozen lakes of Mecklenburg, its outline sharper and smaller than the Messerschmitt 262. The fuselage bore no serial number, only a white triangle with the number 73 inside. Cross-referencing known Luftwaffe inventory from that period, archivists found no record of any aircraft matching that description. Metadata extracted from the celluloid placed the film stock's production at Agfa-Wulfen in February 1945, 2 months before the fall of Berlin. Days later, one of the recovered crates was quietly transferred to the Bundesnachrichtendienst (BND) archives in Pullach under escort. Unofficial sources suggest it contained personal correspondence from Dr. Klaus Hartwig, an engineer believed to have disappeared in April 1945 after Rechlin's destruction. A decrypted telegram found among the materials referenced Sonderwerk 12, a facility unknown in Allied intelligence summaries. Its coordinates were partly burned away, but fragments of a grid reference hinted at a location near the Baltic coast, within what became East Germany. Further forensic handwriting comparison linked Hartwig to earlier research under the Peenemünde West program, the same branch responsible for early V-2 rocket testing. Parallel to the German investigation, declassified fragments from the US National Archives revealed cross-referenced microfilm labeled Foreign Equipment Research 1946, Reel 231C. The report, written by Major Thomas L. Carver of the U.S. Air Technical Intelligence Division, described confiscated blueprints from a Luftwaffe aeronautics project involving adaptive camouflage and sound minimization coating. Strikingly, the codename Hummingbird was redacted in the American copy, replaced by an alphanumeric code beginning with OS. 1182. Existence of this microfilm suggests that Allied forces knew of the program but deliberately obscured its origin after the war. Contemporary metallurgical tests on the recovered fragments from the Tempelhof vault revealed a layered composite of aluminum, carbon, and barium sulfate in ratios inconsistent with 1940s manufacturing. The composite's microstructure indicated a thermal curing process that would have required machinery beyond Germany's known wartime capability. Dr. Heike Rother, a materials scientist advising the WWII, noted in her closed-session testimony that the material's acoustic absorption was anomalously high for its density, implying it was designed to deflect radar or sound decades before stealth technology existed. Her full statement was removed from the public record within 48 hours of being uploaded to the federal database. The deeper the archival team went, the more connections appeared between Operation Hummingbird and post-war aerospace development. An unsigned memorandum found in the vault, dated May 1946 and written in English, discussed the integration of recovered Colibri assets into Western intelligence technical projects. The memorandum referenced a meeting at Oberammergau, attended by both US and British officers attached to the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee, CIOS. This timeline coincided with Operation Papercliff, suggesting Hummingbird's remnants were quietly absorbed into Allied research rather than destroyed. By mid-2024, speculation within the defense community grew. Online forums dedicated to declassified aviation projects began circulating leaked photos from the Tempelhof find, showing the corroded frame of a small aircraft with unusual delta wings. Officials dismissed the images as forgeries, but satellite analysis of the excavation site showed sealed containers removed by night convoy 2 weeks after discovery. The convoy's destination, traced by open-source vehicle tracking data, ended at an unlisted facility near Ingolstadt, known colloquially as Depot 47. The Bundeswehr has refused comment. Among historians, the discovery reignited an old debate: how far the Third Reich had advanced in experimental aviation before collapse. But within intelligence circles, the concern was different. If Operation Hummingbird had truly been erased from both Axis and Allied archives, then someone, either in the dying days of the Reich or within the post-war intelligence community, had chosen to bury it for reasons that remain classified. The recovered documents from Tempelhof are now sealed under federal archive. Restriction Code R144. Access requires dual authorization from the Ministry of Defense and the Federal Chancellery. In late June, a brief internal memo circulated through NATO's classified network, warning member states of unverified material recoveries of strategic historical interest. Attached was a single blurred photograph of a metallic fragment stamped with serial number, Colibri 73-3. The memo carried no author, no signature, and no traceable origin. Its final line read simply, "Reactivation of dormant research protocols not authorized without cross-governmental consent. The Tempelhof vault has since been resealed, its entrance concreted over." No official statement has been issued. Yet beneath Berlin's airfield, once the heart of German aviation, there remains a silent archive that challenges the accepted history of wartime innovation. The air that once carried the first jet fighters now hides the echoes of a project designed to be forgotten. Chapter 2. The Lost Facility of Sonderwerk. 2 months after the Tempelhof discovery, investigators from the Bundesarchive's Historical Research Division traced a series of coordinates mentioned in Dr. Klaus Hartwig's letters. The partially burned grid references pointed to a dense stretch of coastal woodland north of Rostock, near the village of Wustrow. Satellite imaging revealed faint geometric depressions in the terrain, rectangular foundations roughly 30 meters apart, overgrown but unnaturally uniform. The local forestry office confirmed that the area, known as Sector 7A, had been fenced off since the 1950s, labelled a former ordnance test zone on military maps. In July 2024, a joint expedition from the WWII and the University of Hamburg's Department of Military Archaeology secured access under permit M24731. Ground penetrating. Radar identified an underground structure extending nearly 40 meters beneath the surface. The first descent took place on August 3rd. Inside, teams found reinforced concrete corridors lined with rusted pipes and collapsed partitions. Radiation meters registered trace contamination consistent with early barium and lead compounds, likely residues from experimental paint or coatings. Etched above the entrance to a main hall was a phrase in faded Gothic script: Sonderwerk 12, Abteilung für Schallabsorption und Tarnung. Translation: Special Works 12, Division for Sound Absorption and Camouflage. This was the first physical confirmation that the codename from Hartwig's notes referred to a functioning installation, not a theoretical design office. Among the debris were 3 filing cabinets welded shut from oxidation. After extraction, one was successfully opened in a controlled environment. Inside lay over 200 pages of log entries dated between November 1943 and March 1945. The documents recorded experiments measuring decibel reduction in heat, dispersion on small aerodynamic shells. Each test was referenced to a project number, Colibri 71 through Colibri 74, and cross-signed by Hartwig and a second engineer, Dr. Wilhelm Kranz, an acoustics specialist previously attached to the Kriegsmarine. Kranz's post-war records had vanished after his 1946 transfer to British custody under Operation Surgeon, a parallel to Papercliff. The presence of his name linked Sonderwerk 12 not only to the Luftwaffe but to the broader network of German acoustic and radar countermeasure research. An adjacent chamber yielded a generator, unit unlike any catalogued wartime model. Its serial tag read AEG Type K73 Beta with an inspection date of 2.245. The generator bore a copper plaque engraved, Patent Pending, Reich Patent Office File 189372K. Cross-referencing the file number led nowhere. The Reich Patent Office archives from that year were destroyed during Allied bombings. However, a surviving microfiche in the US National Archives, Real T77 1184, references an identical number tied to a requisition order from Technisches Amt 6, the Luftwaffe's technical division. The requisition's subject line, Vibration Nullification Power Supply for Experimental Unit. This confirmed that Sonderwerk 12 was operational until the final weeks of the war, engaged in projects combining acoustic manipulation and radar deflection, technologies that should have been decades ahead of their time. Further inside, the team discovered a sealed observation room behind a collapsed wall. Its windows were reinforced with leaded glass, and beneath the dust lay a series of reel-to-reel recording machines manufactured by Telefunken. Remarkably, several magnetic tapes survived intact. When restored by technicians from the German Broadcasting Archive, the recordings revealed hours of ambient hums, mechanical noises, and disturbingly, brief spoken fragments. In one segment dated February 19, 1945, a male voice identified as Hartwig reported, Subject B shows spatial disorientation under sustained frequency exposure. Recommend termination of trial. The line abruptly cut off. No subsequent record explained who Subject B was, or what frequency exposure referred to. Local residents of Worcester recalled decades of rumors about the bunker that sang. During the GDR era, the area was strictly off-limits under Soviet supervision. Declassified Stasi surveillance files from 1961, recovered after reunification, contain references to Object 5112K, a restricted military research site believed to house captured German acoustic weapon systems. Soviet engineers allegedly dismantled key machinery in the early 1950s before abandoning the installation. Yet no official Soviet documentation about the site has ever surfaced, suggesting the materials were quietly transferred to Moscow's Institute for Advanced Aeronautics. The Soviet archives deny any record under that classification. As excavation continued, forensic analysts catalogued traces of human remains embedded in the lower levels. Dental analysis later identified one skull as belonging to a male aged approximately 45, consistent with Dr. Hartwig's reported age at disappearance. The remains were found adjacent to a collapsed stairwell, alongside a rusted Mauser pistol and 2 empty casings. Though initial reports labelled it a combat fatality, further ballistic analysis suggested a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This finding was omitted from the official expedition report filed with the Ministry of Defence. Instead, the summary concluded tersely. Engineer deceased during facility evacuation. Circumstances indeterminate. By October 2024, portions of Sonderwerk 12 had been resealed for public safety, but digital scans of its interior circulated among independent researchers. An analysis by aviation historian Dr. Peter Malden proposed that the facility's layout mirrored that of later NATO acoustic testing chambers built in the 1960s. He noted the uncanny resemblance between the Colibri blueprints and experimental stealth shapes first, appearing in classified US prototypes by 1958. The implication was inescapable. Post-war Western research may have been seeded by data quietly. Extracted from this very bunker in December, A whistleblower within the Bundesarchiv leaked a fragment of a memo dated June 1946, written by a British technical officer, Major Colin Reeves. The note, addressed to the Air Ministry's Directorate of Scientific Intelligence, stated, "Recommend the indefinite sealing of Warsaw facility. Certain developments must not be publicly associated with captured German research." The document was stamped eyes only. CIOS RAF 4571. Its existence confirms that both Allied intelligence and the British Air Ministry knew of Sonderwerk 12, deliberately concealing it from post-war reports. Today, the coordinates of Sonderwerk 12 remain classified, and access requires NATO-level clearance. The official stance declares it a contaminated site under environmental restriction. Yet the fragments of Hartwig's letters, the surviving recordings, and the silent chambers of that coastal bunker whisper a darker truth: that the pursuit of technological superiority erased not only the boundaries of science, but the lives of those who built it. Beneath the Baltic soil, the echoes of frequencies once meant to render men and machines invisible still resonate, unheard by the world that forgot them. Chapter 3. The Missing Microfilm of 1946. By January 2025, investigators tracing the remnants of Operation Hummingbird had shifted their focus from Germany to the United States. Evidence suggested that Allied intelligence, particularly the US Air Technical Intelligence Division, had confiscated the project's materials in the chaotic aftermath of the war. The trail led to a single microfilm reel, designated FER-231C, recorded under the Foreign Equipment Research Program in 1946. According to its declassification log, the reel was transferred from the US Army Air Forces to the newly formed Central Intelligence Group in 1947, then marked as missing during a 1962 archival audit. For 70 years, no record of its contents surfaced. That changed when a retired archivist named Eleanor Vance submitted a sealed envelope to the Library of Congress in October 2024, claiming to possess a partial copy of FER-231C that had been kept off-site for safety. The envelope contained 3 microfilm frames and a note: "Reel damaged. Origin unknown. Do not return." The frames were digitized under controlled conditions. Each image bore frame identifiers typical of the 1940s, sprocket markings, exposure codes, and date stamps reading ATID 8.446. The first frame showed a technical sketch labeled Colibri, Structural Absorption Array, Revenue C, with annotations in both German and English. The second displayed what appeared to be a test report, its heading stamped: Retelling Experimental Command and Transferred April 1945, Evaluation by ATID Group 512. The third frame was, partially obscured by overexposure but revealed, a typed paragraph describing reflected signal amplitude reduction of 83% under multiband radar conditions. No known wartime technology approached such results. The implications were staggering, if genuine. This would predate the earliest documented stealth research by over 3 decades. When the images were presented to the National Archives Technical Authentication Unit, the response was immediate and unsettling. Within 48 hours, the files were reclassified under Department of Defense Directive 5115-21, labeled Temporary Security Withholding. Ms. Vance was contacted by federal agents and later declined all interviews. Her last recorded communication was an email to a journalist stating, "It's not about aircraft, it's about what they tested it on." The message timestamp was 02:17 a.m., December 11, 2024. 2 days later, her home in Maryland was sealed following an accidental gas leak. The case remains under investigation, though no foul play has been officially confirmed. Simultaneously, a Freedom of Information Act request filed by historian Dr. Lucas Engel uncovered references to a Colibri Subject Evaluation Program under Project Number 1108S at Wright Field, Ohio, in 1947. Most records had been destroyed in a 1952 fire, but an interoffice memo dated June 14, 1947 survived in microform. The memo, authored by Colonel James A. Hadley, read, "German-derived acoustic systems being tested under restricted atmospheric conditions. Biomedical feedback inconclusive. Further trials suspended by order of Joint Chiefs, pending ethical review." No other files mention biomedical components related to the Hummingbird project. Yet within weeks of Hadley's memo, multiple German scientists associated with post-war research contracts Hartwig's colleagues, vanished from official rosters without explanation. Among the surviving evidence was a personal journal kept by Major Thomas Carver, one of the ATID engineers who catalogued the captured German technology. Discovered in a family estate sale in 2023, the journal's entries were unremarkable until its final page. Dated August 9, 1946. New composite demonstrates phase cancellation at human audible range. Lab instructed to discontinue physiological trials. Box 73 sealed, marked for transfer to Langley. The same Box 73 identifier appeared in several of Hartwig's wartime notes recovered from Tempelhof, strongly suggesting that the same materials travelled from Germany to US custody before being erased from records. By February 2025, the investigative team from the Bundesarchiv and the University of Hamburg sought cooperation from the US National Declassification Center. Their requests were denied on grounds of ongoing security review. However, leaked internal correspondence between analysts at the Defense Technical Information Center referenced a Colibri anomaly file scheduled for destruction under code. DTI 5674, the correspondence mentioned, legacy foreign materials unsuitable for public release and included one striking phrase, presence of organic signatures within test composites. The exact meaning remains unclear, but forensic linguists suggest organic signatures could refer to biological matter embedded within the experimental materials, a theory aligning disturbingly with the physiological trials hinted at in Carver's journal. 1 week after these leaks, an anonymous package was delivered to the office of investigative journalist Natascha Voll in Munich. Inside were high-resolution scans of what appeared to be the remaining frames of FER 231C. The accompanying note, typed on vintage paper, read, "You found the wrong half. The rest was never lost. It was buried." The frames included blurred images of what looked like a human figure standing beside a metallic shell, the shape reminiscent of the Colibri 73 prototype recovered from Tempelhof. Annotations in English read, "Test Subject A, Frequency Resilience Evaluation, 15 min exposure." The following frame showed only static lines and a dark silhouette. Experts who examined the scans confirmed they were consistent with 1940s microfilm emulsions and exposure levels. In March 2025, both the original and duplicate microfilm copies vanished from storage under unclear circumstances. Security footage from the archive's restricted media vault showed a brief outage at 02:11 a.m., 7 minutes of total darkness, followed by a static surge that corrupted the digital log. Since then, no official record of FER 231C's location has surfaced. The investigation into its disappearance has been labelled closed due to insufficient evidence. Today, the microfilm exists only in fragments, scattered frames, burned notes, and whispered accounts from those who briefly saw them. Yet its implications are unmistakable. The missing reel connects wartime German research to early post-war American experiments and to a technology that may have used living test subjects to perfect its acoustic nullification effects. Whether by accident or intent, history's clean narrative of technological progress concealed something far darker. A shared, transnational decision to erase the line between physics and human endurance. The reel that once documented it is gone, but its shadow remains, etched into the classified margins of every archive that dares to remember it. Chapter 4. The British Silence Directive of 1948. In April 2025, a set of documents surfaced within the United Kingdom's National Archives at Kew during a recataloguing of declassified intelligence materials. Among them, archivist Henry Mallory discovered a slim folder mislabeled Meteorological Reports, Northern Europe, 1948. Inside were 6 pages stamped Top Secret, UK Eyes Only, DSIR File, 1412B. The first line of the cover memo read, "Immediate suppression of all." References to Operation Hummingbird and associated acoustics research conducted under post-war custody. The signature at the bottom belonged to Air Vice Marshal Harold Goodwin of the Directorate of Scientific Intelligence. Dated June 18, 1948, the memo referenced a silence directive issued jointly by the Air Ministry and the Ministry of Supply to prevent further political repercussions regarding the integration of former enemy personnel into classified defence programs. It appeared that the British government, like the Americans, had quietly absorbed fragments of Sonderwerk 12's technology and had just as quietly buried the evidence. The attached pages contained minutes from an internal meeting held on June 10, 1948, at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, Farnborough. The meeting's topic was listed as Acoustic Shielding Applications, Colibri Findings. Among the attendees were Goodwin, Dr. Colin Reeves, and a civilian consultant named Professor Alistair Morton of Imperial College London. Morton's handwritten notes, scrawled in the margins, included the phrase, "Field trials successful, human effect intolerable." The report described a prototype test in which low-frequency emissions caused temporary incapacitation, loss of equilibrium, and severe nausea in test personnel. A follow-up paragraph recommended the immediate cessation of open-field testing and secure transfer of all data to Admiralty Research Station 72, Portland. The names of two scientists, both of German origin, were later blacked out with heavy ink. Over the next several months, more connections appeared. Declassified Admiralty records revealed that between 1949 and 1951, Portland hosted a classified program under the codename Project Seabird. Officially, the project investigated underwater sound propagation, but a surviving equipment inventory lists directional acoustic emitters, K-series, nearly identical in nomenclature to the Colibri experimental devices. A maintenance log dated February 2, 1950, noted structural damage to test chamber B following uncontained frequency event, resulting in 2 injuries, 1 fatality. The entry's author, Commander P.L. Hargreaves, later joined the Ministry of Defence and never publicly spoke about Portland. The British government has never acknowledged any connection between Project Seabird and wartime. German technology. When journalist Eleanor Whitfield began investigating the Silence Directive in late 2024, she uncovered cross-references to a defunct Air Ministry file numbered AM-CIOS 23417. That file was supposed to contain reports from the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee, which handled the technical evaluation of captured enemy research. The file's status was listed as destroyed 1963, but a registry card remained. The card contained one striking annotation under Summary. Retelling acoustic data transferred under Hummingbird, classified indefinitely. The notation proved that the British were in possession of the same experimental data described in the Tempelhof and Sonderwerk 12 discoveries. Whitfield submitted a formal request for access to the Silence Directive's full text. Within a week, her request was denied on grounds of national security pertaining to active defense patents. 3 months later, her press credentials were suspended after an anonymous complaint to her employer alleged foreign influence. Unredacted copies of Morton's private letters, later published posthumously by his estate, revealed his growing fear over what the experiments implied. In a letter dated September 12, 1949, he wrote, "The acoustic work derived from the Germans is not defensive. It has no place in civil research. They are pursuing something that interferes with the human equilibrium at the most fundamental level. We have inherited not a technology, but a curse." 3 weeks later, Morton abruptly resigned his consultancy and retreated to his family home in Kent, where he died in 1952 of what the coroner ruled cardiac exhaustion. He was 47. Among his papers was a note written in pencil. If the frequency cannot be heard, it cannot be contained. By early 2025, digital copies of the Silence Directive began circulating on encrypted historian networks. The most chilling section came from paragraph 5. In the interest of transatlantic cooperation, all British research materials related to Hummingbird, Seabird, or any derivative acoustic shielding studies are to be withheld from public or parliamentary scrutiny. Any reference to biological or physiological trials is to be omitted from all future summaries. The language mirrored American phrasing from the 1947 Biomedical Security Addendum, which governed human experimentation in classified contexts. This synchronization suggested direct coordination between the UK and US intelligence communities to suppress the same body of research. Historians attempting to track the missing materials believe they were transferred to the Defence Research Establishment at Porton Down in 1953. Porton's archives list a new experimental line labelled Low Frequency, Acoustic Containment, Project 853A. Documents from that period remain sealed, but a former technician interviewed anonymously recalled equipment unlike anything built in Britain before, describing circular steel chambers and a continuous low hum that seem to vibrate inside your chest. His employment records end in 1954. The remainder of his personnel file is redacted. In May 2025, the British Ministry of Defence issued a rare public statement acknowledging the Silence Directive's existence, but maintaining it was an administrative measure typical of the Cold War era, now of historical interest only. Yet digital metadata on the declassified scans showed modification dates as recent as 2019, implying that someone within government systems had accessed and possibly edited the files less than 6 years ago. Whether this indicates renewed research or a modern audit remains unknown. Behind the official language of containment lies a persistent unease. Every recovered document, from Sonderwerk 12 to the Silence Directive, points toward a continuity of purpose that transcends national borders, a hidden legacy of wartime science repurposed for Cold War ambitions. The British Directive was not merely an act of censorship, it was the quiet acceptance of shared guilt. Somewhere beneath layers of bureaucracy and secrecy, the hum of Hummingbird, its impossible frequencies and unseen vibrations, continued to resonate through the institutions sworn to bury it. And in that silence, history's most dangerous frequency still waits to be heard again. Chapter 5. The Hummingbird Continuation Files. In August 2025, a digital breach at the European Defence Agency exposed a small batch of unindexed documents hidden within a legacy NATO data server. The folder, labelled EDA RC731HB, contained encrypted PDFs, low-resolution scans of paper files, and a metadata tag reading, retained under Allied Technical Cooperation Agreement, 1961. Forensic analysts confirmed that the data originated from a now-defunct NATO research program run out of the Netherlands in the early 1960s. Most of the documents were mundane, test logs, expense sheets, technical reports, but one file stood out. Its title, Hummingbird Continuation Files. It contained correspondence between British, American, and West German defense officials debating the controlled reactivation of prior acoustic research assets for application in submarine stealth and crowd control technologies. The project designation matched an earlier codename buried in the Silence Directive, Colibri Phase 2. The recovered communications dated from 1962 to 1968, well into the Cold War. They referenced a series of field verifications conducted in the North Sea and later in the Nevada desert. A cable from March 3, 1964, signed by U.S. Naval Research Commandant Rear Admiral Arthur L. Pearson, reported, Test Article HB9 demonstrates total radar and sonar null return at 22.8 Hz modulation. Personnel exposure remains unfeasible beyond 90 seconds. The tone of the memo suggested that human testing continued, despite official denials after the Nuremberg Code had made such practices illegal. A British counterpart, labelled DSIR 9 1965, responded tersely, operational potential outweighs biomedical risk. Proceed under agreed parameters. Below, a handwritten annotation read, Seabird will cover this. By cross-referencing serial numbers from the recovered files, investigators linked the project's equipment manifests to shipments routed through a West German installation near Hohenfels, Bavaria. The facility, known officially as Versuchsanlage H7, was constructed in 1959 under US Army supervision. Its stated function was radar calibration, but internal NATO correspondence described it as a collaborative test range for low-frequency field interactions. In October 2025, journalist Natasha Vole obtained satellite images showing a sealed subterranean structure adjacent to the former range, still maintained and powered. Its coordinates, 49 Caudi 1209 N, 11 to 50 47th E, matched a restricted zone under Bundeswehr jurisdiction. When questioned, Germany's Federal Ministry of Defense claimed the site stored obsolete communications infrastructure, refusing further comment. As investigators dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Each decade since the 1940s revealed a reappearance of Hummingbird research under a different codename. In the 1950s, Project Seabird at Portland. In the 1960s, Colibri Phase 2 under NATO oversight. In the 1980s, references to adaptive field cloaking within US Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency records. Each successor program preserved fragments of the original Sonderwerk 12 experiments, refined, reclassified, and relocated. The continuity was undeniable. What began as a Nazi attempt to make aircraft invisible had evolved into a transnational effort to manipulate frequencies capable of masking not only machines, but human perception itself. Among the NATO archive scans, one image drew particular attention. A debriefing transcript dated October 21, 1966. It described test subject Delta, exposed to harmonic emissions from a modified HB-9 prototype. The subject reportedly experienced complete disorientation and temporary sensory blackout. The attending physician's note read, "Subject unresponsive, but vitals stable. Exposure terminated at 1min32 sec. Subsequent tissue sample analysis pending." Below the typed text, a blacked-out section concealed an additional paragraph. When enhanced digitally, faint impressions of the missing lines became visible. Residual vibration observed in post-mortem tissue. Frequency decay not measurable. The implication was clear. Whatever frequencies Hummingbird generated, they lingered beyond physical exposure, embedded within biological matter. In September 2025, independent researcher Lukas Engel released a comprehensive timeline connecting the Tempelhof Vault, Sonderwerk 12, the missing microfilm, the Silence Directive, and the continuation files. His report, The Unheard War, argued that NATO's founding members had inherited and perpetuated elements of wartime acoustic weaponry research under civilian defense programs. Within days of publication, Engel's website was taken offline following a coordinated cyber intrusion traced to anonymous IPs in multiple countries. When contacted by German authorities, Engel reported being followed and receiving anonymous calls warning him to cease historical misrepresentation. 3 weeks later, he vanished en route from Hamburg to Brussels. His car was found abandoned near the A1 motorway, doors locked, engine cold. His laptop and passport were missing. The case remains open. By late 2025, the European Defence Agency quietly acknowledged the existence of legacy classified material related to joint acoustic research projects from 1945-1970, but denied any connection to modern technology. However, a leaked internal memo marked EDA AUD 2025 confidential stated, "Residual experimental frequencies remain stored in analog data systems. Do not attempt digital conversion without executive clearance." The phrasing, "residual frequencies," implied that the sound patterns themselves were still preserved somewhere, perhaps on the original magnetic tapes recovered from Sonderwerk 12 8 decades earlier. If digitized, they might be capable of reproducing the same acoustic effects once considered too dangerous to replicate. As of this writing, all known physical evidence related to Operation Hummingbird has been reclassified under the European Mutual Security Agreement and removed from public access. The Tempelhof Vault is sealed. The Wustrow site is guarded by Bundeswehr personnel. The microfilm and its duplicates have vanished. The British Silence Directive has been redacted again, this time with entire pages replaced by blank placeholders. The continuation files, though fragmented, suggest that Hummingbird was never merely an aircraft project. It was a study in perception, an effort to understand how sound and vibration could erase presence itself. Somewhere, buried deep within a NATO server or a forgotten archive basement, the surviving analog recordings of Hummingbird's frequencies may still exist. No one has attempted playback since 1945. Every known copy is locked behind multi-layered security classification, labeled simply, "Do not reproduce." Yet history shows that secrets, once unearthed, seldom remain silent forever. The hum that began in a hidden German bunker continues to echo through every defense laboratory and classified document that inherited its silence, a faint, endless vibration between science and denial, waiting for someone, somewhere, to listen again.